Good day. I am Charlene Maybe Villajuan. I will be reporting the chapter 9, which is the field research. Okay, so field research is commonly used by naturalists, biologists to observe wild animals and plants in their natural habitat without harming or changing the setting or behavior of the subject under study. So it is used to reveal that the habits and habitats of organisms in their natural surroundings. So the field study is also commonly used by researchers in social science and education studies to observe and record human actions and behavior. So today, field research has been used in various disciplines of studies. Example, biology, psychology, history, education, health sciences, anthropology, sociology, business, consumer, arts, and other social and behavioral sciences. So although field study is generally characterized as a qualitative method, it can be conducted together with quantitative method as a mixed method study. So, in other words, field study is the research methodology of observing events in their natural setting as they occur. So, it is different from the survey research method, which does not require the survey to be conducted in natural setting. So, when we say field study, so it the natural behavior of the subject under that study. We have here an example. Spool 2007 used field studies to learn about how people behave by watching people shopping in malls, and from observing, he gained insight into how people manage shopping lists and purchase items on impulse. So from this observation, he discovered the needs of shoppers and learned to create successful e-commerce plans. So another example is Croft and Doherty, 2012. So also used a field study to observe the influence of teacher-family communication on student engagement. So from the result of the observation, so they identified three primary mechanisms through which communication likely affected engagement. So the mechanisms are stronger teacher-student relationship, expanded parental involvement, and increased student motivation. So that are the example of a field research. So let's proceed to A, functions of field research. So through field research, researcher observe and record the actions and behavior of their individual or group subject in natural conditions. So data is collected through observation. So the observation method will enable the researcher to collect data on. So we have here four conditions, which is the physical conditions, the action conditions, interaction conditions, program implementation conditions. So that are the conditions that the observation method will enable that the researcher are unable to collect. So first is the physical condition. So the physical condition is this is the characteristic which shapes a person's behavior, not such as the gender, race, and socio-economic status. So it's all about the physical condition of your subject. And then another one is the action condition. So the actions, this is the condition which related to emotion, motivation, feelings, attitude, and etc. So this action condition is what drives you to do such an actions. So that's involved emotion, the motivations, that drives you that in that actions. So another one is the interaction condition. The interaction condition between the people under the study that occurs verbally, non-verbally, formally, informally, planned, and unplanned. So this interaction condition is, so it's all about interacting, interacting to one another person. So the program implementation condition is this is related to the condition before, during, and after the implementation of a program related to sources, implementation, curriculum development, customer, etc. So this program implementation condition is example. The program that you are implementing is you are gonna check before, during, and after the implementation of that program. So events observed during field research are happening continuously and naturally in real time. They cannot be designed, built, or stopped just to suit the aim of the research. So that was described by Tunnell, 1977. Due to this characteristic, field research is also known as a natural research. So let's proceed to B. Two data collection methods for field research. So these two methods that used to collect data for field research are systematic observation and participant observation. So let's have a brief overview about what is systematic and participant observation. So under the systematic observation, the natural events are selected, recorded, and encoded into meaningful units and explained by the researcher who does not take part in the event. So while in participant observation, the researcher is the one of the participant in the research and it is directly involved in the event which are being studied. So that is the difference between the systematic and the participant observation. So systematic observation, in this method, the researcher makes plan for his observation before the field research is conducted. So the first step in systematic observation is selecting an event. So this is based on the interest of the researcher himself or according to the researcher aim or the research aim. So week 1968 classified 4 events which are the most interesting behaviors for study in social science field research. So these are the 4 events of greatest interest in field research: the nonverbal event, spatial event, extra-linguistic event, and linguistic event. So start in nonverbal event. The content of this event is this covers all aspect or it covers aspect of body language that conveys information such as gesture and facial expression involving eye movement and mimicry. Observation on nonverbal event enable researcher to collect information about behaviors, feelings, attitudes, and so on. Another one is a spatial event. So the content of this event is this covers aspect concerning the relationship between people or object. Observation of spatial event provide researcher with information about the relationship and differences among people and how they react to each other. Another is extra-linguistic event. This covers all aspects related to rate, tone, strength, and other behavior governing how people speak. It provides information about human speech. And the last field research event is linguistic event, and the content of this event is this covers behavior related to the content of speech and written materials. So it provides information about the thinking and methods of communication in people. So that are the 4 interesting behaviors in study in the social science field research. Let's proceed to systematic observation sampling, which under the systematic observation. A is once a research event has been decided upon, the researcher must determine the research sampling. So this sampling is this help the researcher to make his observation more meaningful because the researcher cannot observe the respondent at all time. So generally, the systematic observation sampling is divided into 2 types: time sampling and event sampling. So the 2 types are shown in the PPT. Okay, so as I said earlier that the systematic observation sampling methods is divided into 2, which is the time sampling and event sampling. Which is the time sampling, there are 3 under it: the continuous time sampling, marked time sampling, time interval sampling. So let's go first in the observation using continuous time sampling. In this method, the researcher will observe everything related to the behavior of the research subject for the entire duration of that event. For instance, a researcher is conducted to investigate time spent and the activities carried out by long-distance education program lectures within a certain time period. This method is usually used to observe short-term events where the measurement can be taken for the entire duration of the research. So in this case, studying lecturers' behavior, example, the amount of time they spend in online discussion with students or preparing online teaching materials for a single day is an example of research using continuous time sampling method. Proceed to the observation using marked time sampling. So this involves the selection of an action or behavior existing at a certain point in time, either the early, middle, or final stage of the whole event. For example, in the research title, Preparation of a Tutor in Computer Science in the Computer Lab, the researcher could make an observation at a marked time such as at the last 5 minutes or every lesson. At this time, the researcher will observe whether the tutor makes any preparation before the next lesson begins. So let's proceed to observation using time interval sampling. In this method, observation is made at a fixed time interval through the entire event. So in the next example, the researcher observed preparations activities carried out by college lecturers at 5 minutes interval before the end of each teaching period. So just study the table. Okay, let's proceed to another sampling observation under systematic observation, which is the observation using event sampling. In these methods, observations are made on a specific event or behavior when another event or behavior is present. So it is used to study the effect of another event on the event being studied. It can be used to test the hypothesis of relationship between two variables. So for example, an observation is made on student behavior when the discipline teacher is present in the classroom. Event sampling can be used to compare the behavior of this student in the presence and absence of the discipline teacher. So note that in systematic observation, the researcher is a full observer or systematic observer. The researcher is a full observer in a systematic observation when his status as an observer is unknown to the subject in the study. So in this case, the observer does not take any part in the event being studied. The benefit of this method is that the event will proceed naturally as the researcher identity is unknown to the participant. So let's proceed to number 2, the participant observation. When the researcher himself becomes one of the participants in the research or is directly involved in the event under study, it is a participant observation. So participant observation is different from systematic observation as the researcher is a participant in the event being studied. In systematic observation, the researcher is just an observer and does not take part in the event under observation. So the participants of the events are not aware of either the researcher presence or the fact that they are being observed. A. The role of the observer in participant observations. So there are 3 kinds of observer in participant observations. So they are the observer as a participant as the observer, and full participant. We have here an illustration to understand it easily. So let's proceed to the 3 kinds of observer in participant observation. First is the observer as a participant. So in this case, the observer is a participant who is involved directly in the event being studied but does not take an active part in it. So his status as a researcher is known to the participant and they know that they are being observed. So this situation is different from the full observation method, where the identity of the researcher is unknown to the participant. So that is the observer as a participant. So another is the participant as the observer. In this case, the observer plays an active role in the event being studied and his status as a researcher is known to the participant. So for example, a researcher is studying the behavior of participants preparing their coursework. So the researcher will play an active part as a participant of the course by getting involved in the coursework as well. So he will note down the behavior of the other participant while doing the coursework and they are aware of his status. So they are aware that he is also a researcher or he is also part of the participant in the subject. Full participant. In this case, the researcher functions as an observer and is actively involved in the event. However, his status and identity as the researcher is kept hidden. So he functions like a spy for the police who keep his identity a secret from members of a criminal gang in order to expose their crime. So the benefit of this method is that the event will proceed naturally in his identity as unknown to the participants. So let's proceed to B, which is the participant observation sampling. The participant observation sampling is different from systematic observation sampling. Random assignment is nearly impossible to use in the participant observation method because it is difficult to carry out under natural conditions. So once the research target group has been decided upon, the research can use the 2 non-probability sampling method whereby each participant does not have an equal chance of being selected. So the non-probability sampling methods are the quota sampling and the snowball sampling. The quota sampling selection of samples based on categories as population is divided into. So for example, the researcher may be interested to select his respondent based on their gender, race, or educational background. So he can select male and female as subsamples according to a certain ratio. So another one is snowball sampling. So this method is simple as the researcher can ask a participant to name anyone he knows to become a respondent. So the participant who is selected will suggest another subject with identical characteristic to join him as research subject. So he may suggest friends, relatives, or people whom he knows and think have suitable characteristic to become subject. So this method is suitable for use with the participant observation method, the observer as participant method, or the participant as observer method, as the status of the observer or research is known to the participant. Okay, let's proceed to letter C, recording observation. So systematic and participant observation methods have different ways of recording observations. So systematic observation instrument includes video recorders, checklists, and other permanent recording devices. Whereas the use of these items in participant observation may be impossible as the researcher is involved in the activity without revealing his identity as a researcher or full participant method. So in such situation, so the researcher must write down the data of his observation on paper or recall them through memory. However, it is difficult to memorize every participant's behavior. To overcome this problem, field journals may be used. So a field journal is a notebook designed especially for observation recording purposes. So every detail to the observation must be recorded. For example, a researcher is conducting a study using systematic observation with an observer as participant sampling methods on the effectiveness of teaching mathematics using ICT among new lecturers. So the researcher only notes down the method, style, and language of a particular lecturer during his teaching, not his behavior before the lesson. Where the new lecturer is not skilled in setting up the ICT devices, the new lecturer takes 20 minutes to set up the liquid crystal display or the LCD or electronic visual display and turn on the laptop. So the new lecturer also informed that the researcher that he is not used to teaching using ICT as it is time consuming. So during the observation period, so the researcher may have assumed that the information needed is the way the lecturer teaches using ICT, but when he is about to report his observation, he realizes the importance of observing the behavior of the new lecturer before and after the lesson. So the observed behavior can be used as evidence to support his discussion about the attitude of new lecturers toward ICT as a teaching tool. So hence, everything that happened and is observed must be recorded. The researcher must decide on the recording method before he begins his observation. So he can choose to record using video recorder, camera, cassette recorder, through note-taking, or using a checklist that shows 3 forms of recording observation. So observations will be more systematic and meaningful when the researcher encodes the observed behavior. Encoding allows behavior to be recorded easily and quickly. At the same time, it allows data to be recorded systematically and meaningfully. It also helps ensure that the data collected is relevant to the research aim. So the choice of methods for recording observation depends on the research design. If your research design is conducted with a qualitative design, so example, how many times a particular behavior is seen, so a checklist can be used. Usually, blank spaces are provided in checklist for noting the presence of an observed behavior. So if the hypothesis of the qualitative nature, example, how or why a certain behavior happens, so every detail of the observation must be recorded as evidence of why or how the behavior occurred. So here's an example of the 3 forms of recording observation as I mentioned earlier. That are the 3 forms of recording observation. Okay, so letter D, structured observation. The method chosen to analyze observation data depends on the method used in collecting it and the type of observation done. So in a structured observation, so the researcher collects data based on the observed action or behavior which is listed in an observation form. In order to make the recording of the respondent behavior faster, ticks or numbers are often used. So an example is shown of the structured observation form. You can see the example of a observation recording form in the PPT. So another is the semantic scale can also be used in recording observation, now as shown in the PPT. So the researcher can design his own method to record data. However, it must be systematic and suitable for answering the research question. We have here Bales 1970 designed an interactive process analysis or the IPA system, which is used to record linguistic, extra-linguistic, and non-verbal behavior when respondents are interacting with one another. So in the IPA system, each category, positive action, answer, question, and negative action is coded using number 1, 2, 3 to 12, which represents the characteristic of each category. So the researcher only records the number of in his form in the encoding checklist. This is an example of Bayes' interactive process analysis program categories. This method of encoding is convenient for the observer because recording behaviors using this method is fast, complete, and detailed without interfering in the process of continuous observation. So the above section has discussed way of note-taking in recording observation. So note-taking is the most commonly used and the easiest technique of recording observation. So the other three most frequently used technique for recording observations are the video or audio recording, photograph taking, and drawing or sketching. So there is no fixed method for recording observation. So the researcher has to use his creativity to develop the most appropriate recording method for his study. Let's proceed to letter E, increasing the reliability of observation. So observation can be triangulated in order to increase its reliability in the following ways. So observation is recorded by a number of observers. So through this, have several people record observation to reduce individual biases. Observation is conducted at different location or settings. So observation conduct observation in various settings to capture diverse perspective. And observation is conducted at different times, so observe at different times to account for variables and changes. So by triangulating observations, you can increase reliability and reduce errors caused by limited perspectives. Let's proceed to letter F, analysis of observation data. According to Dale 1990, observation data is best analyzed qualitatively regardless of the method used. So this means looking at the data in a detailed descriptive way to understand what's happening. So qualitative data, descriptive details, and nuanced. So example, notes and descriptions. So qualitative data, numerical, statistical, example, counts, and percentage. While qualitative data can be converted into quantitative data, so numerical data can't replace the rich detailed insight from qualitative data. Instead, quantitative data can be used to supplement and support the qualitative findings. In short, qualitative analysis is primary and quantitative data is used to add additional context and support. Another is letter G, writing a report for field research. So the report for field research is not limited to a certain format, but the recording, encoding, and explanation of the observation must be systematic and scientific. So the researcher can refer to examples from previous research or use his own method. So, similar to other research methodologies, field research report has two main objectives, which are to provide information for the readers about the finding of the research and to ensure that the reader is given valid and reliable information. So, these objectives require logical and systematic writing skills. In addition, any explanation of observations must be accompanied by solid evidence. A researcher will fail to communicate the data collected if either one of the conditions mentioned is not met. The researcher report of a field study is like a formal research report. However, since field study uses observation as its primary data collection method, the following aspect of field study methodology and data analysis should be included in the research report. So these are main concern and justification, nature setting, method of observation, people under observation, sampling method, activity of the event, and data analysis. First, main concern and justification. So it describes the main concern of the field study and the variable under the study. So you can present rationale and argument based on existing theory to support why field study is used for the research. Second is nature setting. So describe the nature of the organization, so its location and the background information of the setting where the observation is conducted. Another is the method of observation. So it describes you can describe the methods of observation. So what is your method? So it can be systematic or participant observation method. Number 4 is people under observation. So the people under observation is present the demographic information of the individuals being observed. So example, gender, age, race, and educational level, the status, or any demographic information about the respondents of your study. So next is the sampling method. Describe the observation sampling method. So example, time sampling or event sampling, and the method of data collection. So such as note taking, video or audio recording, photograph taking, or drawing and sketching. So it's the methods or the observation sampling methods and the methods for collecting in collecting your data. The activity of the event. Describe the activity of the event under observation, including the type of activity, time frame of the observation, and the reason for selecting the particular event for observation. Last is the data analysis. So describe the data analysis method used for quantitative observation. So example is the descriptive analysis, such as the frequency, percentage, mean, median. So that is the example of the quantitative observation. And another one is the qualitative observation. So example is the content analysis, domain analysis, and thematic analysis. So that is an example of qualitative observation if that is your choice. Okay, so when presenting the result of your observation, so data analysis consider including the following key aspect. Identify and describe the main theme and sub-theme that emerge from your observation of behavior in the organization. Number 2 is the consistency. So discuss how consistent this theme and sub-theme were throughout the observed event or period. And number 3 is pattern and connections. Explore the relationship and pattern between the themes and how they relate to each other. Number 4, link to objectives. So show how the theme and findings connect to the original objectives of your study. Number 5 is the summary. You need to provide a concise summary of the key result and takeaway from your analysis. So that's are the you need to include when presenting the result of your observation data analysis. So letter H, online field study sources. So in this, reader can refer to an online journal, field studies journal. You can use the link that's provided in the PowerPoint presentation, of course. So you can use this as a source of your study, in which your study is, example, biology, which is related to animals, plants, and habitats, etc., or geography, including landscape, hydrology, and human geography, and other subjects such as teaching and learning, conversation issues, history and archaeology, and physical geology. You can use this online source in your study if it is related on your research.